Policy Clause 5.2 of ISO 27001-2013. Hi friends, I welcome you all here in this exciting training session being conducted by TNB Academy. Today in this session, we will discuss about Clause 5.2 of ISO 27001-2013, which talks about the information security policy. So let's get going and start our discussion. Let me explain you that what we will be covering in this chapter. Coverage in the standard. In this session, we will talk about Clause 5.2 of ISO 27001-2013. In our discussion in this session, we will be covering the topics such as 1. What is an information security policy? 2. How it should be drafted and by whom? 3. What aspects should the policy cover? And finally, how it should be documented and communicated within an organization. Reference clause within standards or the other standards which can be useful for this chapter. Friends, if we talk about Clause 5.2 of ISO 27001-2013, then in order to understand its requirements, you should also know about the Clause 6.2 of ISO 27001-2013. As the information security policy also includes the requirement stated in Clause 6.2 of ISO 27001-2013, we advise that you take a thorough understanding of this clause as well. External reference for the chapter. If we talk about the external references that you need to know for understanding the Clause 5.2 of ISO 27001-2013, then you should have an updated version standard copy of ISO 22300-2018 with you. ISO 22300-2018 has definitions for several technical terminologies that are used under different clauses of ISO 27001-2018. So, we suggest you that you should keep a copy of the standard with you for your ready reference. Outcome of the chapter. At the end of this chapter, we will be able to understand what an information security policy is and why it is necessary for an organization, how it is framed and what all information does it cover, and finally, how it is communicated within the organization and to all interested parties. So, let's start our discussion with the brief introduction of Clause 5.2 of ISO 27001-2013. Brief introduction of Clause 5.2. Friends, before we move into the detail of Clause 5.2 of ISO 27001-2013, we need to know what information security policy is. An information security policy is basically a set of rules drafted by the organization for all users or networks that falls under its IT structure. These rules basically tells that how these users or networks will operate and work within the organizational IT structure by keeping the security of data. An information security policy usually governs the protection of information, which is one of the many assets that organization wants to protect. Normally, everything from an A to Z within an IT structure is included in the information security policy. Now, when we come to Clause 5.2 of ISO 27001-2013, we can see that it says an organization should draft an information security policy which sets out the procedures for successful accomplishment of information security management system objectives. It should be well drafted, concise, readable, actionable, enforceable, and flexible. And finally, it should be well communicated within the organization and to all the interested parties as well. Let us now take our discussion further and talk about requirements of Clause 5.2 of ISO 27001-2013 in detail. Requirement of the clause of the standard. The Clause 5.2 of ISO 27001-2013 states the below mentioned requirements from an organization. It says that top management shall establish an information security policy that Point 1. is appropriate to the purpose of the organization. Point 2. Includes information security objectives, C 6.2, or provides the framework for setting information security objectives. Point 3. Includes a commitment to satisfy applicable requirements related to information security. And point 4. Includes a commitment to continual improvement of the information security management system. It also states that the information security policy shall: point 1. Be available as documented information. Point 2. Be communicated within the organization. And point 3. Be available to interested parties as appropriate. Let us now understand these requirements one by one. The first requirement says that the organization should draft a policy which is relevant to the nature of activities that it performs. The information security policy serves as the main link between the top management and the information security activities, as ISO 27001:2013 demands that the management must ensure that ISMS and its objectives are matching to the strategic direction of the organization. The information security policy should address all data, programs, systems, facilities, IT infrastructure, user of technology, and third parties in a given organization to satisfy the purpose of the organization. The second requirement says that the organization should draft an information security policy which addresses the issue of information security. In simpler terms, we mean that the information security policy is designed in such a way that it protects the three main objectives of information security. Number 1. Confidentiality of information. Data and information assets must be confined to people authorized to access and not to be disclosed to others. Point 2. Integrity of information. Keeping the data intact, complete, and accurate, and IT systems operational. Point 3. Availability of information. An objective indicating that information or system is at disposal of authorized users when needed. The third requirement says that the organization should and will provide required resources at all times so that information security objectives are achieved as desired. It means that the policy should reflect a strong commitment from the top management that all resources required for securing and protecting the information, data, and assets will be available as and when required. The fourth and final requirement says that the top management should not just establish an information security management system and sit idle with it. It should provide a commitment that it will review the information security management system from time to time or at decided intervals and will continually improve on the necessary changes. The information security policy should reflect a commitment that the top management will keep performing the continual improvement activities and will keep reviewing the policy at a decided interval so that all information security risks are catered. The next segment of Clause 5.2 of ISO 27001:2013 has three more small requirements. The first of them says that information security policy should be a documented information. It means that the information security policy should not just be in minds of the concerned persons but has to be in a form of evidence. The evidence will be a well-written document, typically called as the information security policy, and includes the above stated requirements. We have a few samples of the information security policy that will help you understand how it is documented. The second requirement says that the information security policy should be well communicated within the organization. Everybody who is a part of the information security management system of the organization should be aware of its information security policy. The best way to do this is to display the information security policy at all places within the organization or on the desktop screen of employees so it is available to read all the times. And finally, but most importantly, the information security policy should be communicated and shared with all interested parties as well. Sharing and communicating the information security policy to interested parties will give them confidence that the concerned organization has complete set of parameters to ensure that the information and assets are protected, and so does their interest as well. So friends, as we now have understood all the requirements of clause 5.2 in detail, let us move to the next segment of our discussion: mandatory documents and retention of documents. Clearly, as we just discussed, clause 5.2 of ISO 27001:2013 requires and demands that the organization should keep the information security policy as a documented information. It should be retained by the organization at all the times and must be produced at the time of audit as well. Practice writing non-conformity under this clause 5.2. Now, let us understand how to write a non-conformity for clause 5.2. It can be understood through an example of sample NC given in AFAR, Audit Findings Action Report 12. Last but not least, now let us understand the common mistakes which auditors do while performing audit under the clause 5.2 of ISO 27001:2013. Point 1. Auditors ask irrelevant questions for the organization which does not relate with the organization to be audited. Point 2. Sometimes auditors start thinking for the option while auditor need to understand the client process and to decide if the client can achieve the result of the MSS through their own process. Point 3. Auditors start consulting activities. Point 4. Auditors start expecting document and records in clause where this may not be mandatory requirement. Point 5. Auditors asking for FSSAI license and registration, asking for the GS3 registration, asking for the ROC registration, asking for the commencement of the business certificate, asking of PF ESI registration certificate, which may not be relevant considering the nature of business organization is performing. Dear friends, we have now come to the conclusion of this training session. See you soon with an exciting new topic. Till then, goodbye.